So we may not be together physically, but we're always together in spirit. Let us listen to, sing if you want, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Good morning. We are so fortunate to have with us again Lisa Garcia-Sampson. Lisa is the Executive Director of Forward Together, the UU Justice Ministry of North Carolina. She graduated from Boston University School of Theology in 2018 and most recently served as the ministerial intern at the First Church in Boston. So we welcome Lisa today.
Our reading today is a story. It comes from an unknown author and was adapted by Bill Shore and again by me. There once was a traveler who journeyed all around the world in search of wisdom. And one day he came upon a village and saw a great deal of noise and dust and commotion, and so he approached the nearest laborer and said, "Excuse me, I'm not from around here. Could you tell me what it is you all are doing?" And the laborer turned around, looked at him kind of funny and said, "Yeah, can't you see? I'm busting rocks." And the traveler said, "Of course, thank you." The traveler walked a little further ways down the road and approached a second laborer doing the same thing, and he asked him the same question. He said, "Excuse me, I'm not from around here. Could you tell me what it is you're doing?" The second laborer turned around and said, "Yeah, sure. Can't you see? I'm making a living to support my family." Again, the traveler said, "Of course. Thank you." And then the traveler went a little further down the road, and he approached a third laborer, doing the same work, and again asked the same question. "Excuse me, could you tell me what you're doing here?" And the third laborer turned to him with a big smile on his face and said, "Can't you see? We're building a cathedral." Good morning. Well, I'm grateful to be back with you all this morning, albeit under different circumstances than we could have even possibly imagined a month ago. Back in March, I had the opportunity to visit your congregation and meet many of you right before this pandemic began to drastically change our lives. But for those of you who don't know, my name is Lisa Garcia-Sampson, and I am the Executive Director of your UU Justice Ministry here in North Carolina. The last time I shared that I'm actually new to North Carolina. Last June, my spouse and I moved here from New England so that Ree could begin a family medicine residency at Duke. And prior to moving, we were longtime residents of Rhode Island. But I also have strong ties to Boston. So while my spouse for the last 5 years was in medical school in Providence, I was commuting back and forth to Boston last year to serve as the intern at First Church Boston, and in the years before that, to attend seminary at Boston University. Seminary was beautiful and eye-opening and hard. And seminary is hard for each person in their own way. While so many of my Methodist and UCC friends in seminary were off having various crises of faith, my personal struggle was around religious language. Words like God and prayer and sin. In seminary, I was suddenly thrown into an environment where these words were constantly being evoked by different people who defined them in different ways, and it was clear that I had some work to do. To sort through my own relationship with those and so many other religious words. Like a lot of UUs from the Northeast and around our country, I grew up Catholic and left the church as a young adult. So a lot of these words felt like dead language to me, no longer active in my life. And more strongly than that, for me, these words could sting a little. I still associated so much religious language with the harm it has caused in this world. And to be honest, the harm it had caused in my own life. And yet, in my classes and in BU's weekly worship service, I could see that these same words had incredible power and significance in the lives of my dear friends. In the storm of seminary, these words anchored them. They had words like God and Spirit to recognize and name the presence of the divine in their lives. They held a deep sense of grace, which inspired self-compassion and self-care. They had the rich spiritual practice of prayer, which guided their ministerial discernment. I was in awe that they could say out loud what was on their hearts in ways that I just didn't know how to do. And I must say, I was a little jealous that they had these words in their spiritual journeys. And it got me thinking, well, what are my spiritual tools? What are my sacred words? So as you'd expect, I wisely sought out my handy UU dictionary of words that we all agree on. And then I quickly remembered that that book doesn't exist. Our former UUA president, William Sinkford, once had this to say about our tradition's history with words. He said, one approach to dealing with language that no longer reflects our common assumptions or values is simply to discard it. Another approach is to search for and use only a kind of least common denominator language that the fewest of us will have to translate. Stripping away, leaving behind words that carry with them histories of being used to exclude, used to limit our spirits or even punish us, is one approach to this dilemma. Bill Sinkford alludes to the fact that our dilemma with words can leave us with a depleted spiritual vocabulary. But as I quickly found out in seminary, we need words. In the book Fluent in Faith, Unitarian Universalist minister Jean Harrison Newar explains the idea that the language we have at our disposal and regularly use shapes how we perceive and experience life and impacts our ability to make theological meaning of life. She writes that words are, quote, essential tools for our imaginations. They define and they limit what is possible. That for which there is no construct in our minds eludes our grasp. For the most part, our lives consist of that which we know, which we can name, and which we have words for. Now, of course, words have limits. There are parts of the human experience that language simply cannot touch. But generally speaking in life, having language sure does help. Words have incredible power in our lives, and that's not just the case with our spiritual lives. One example is our relationship with our emotions. Having a robust emotional vocabulary is incredibly important. But unfortunately, research shows that on average, people can only identify 3 emotions in themselves. Can you guess what they are? Happy, sad, and angry. That's it. But researcher and storyteller Brene Brown explains that, quote, we really need to be able to identify and articulate 30. Research is showing the importance of recognizing emotional granularity. Instead of happy, it's joyful. It's surprised. Instead of angry, it's regret, shame, guilt, humiliated, anxious, uncertain. It's deeper. Having a large emotional vocabulary actually changes the way we understand, experience, and navigate our emotions. Another example is the power of language in the LGBTQ community. Recently, tons of new words are being created to affirm different genders and sexual orientations. And people in my community, the LGBTQ community, are not just doing this to see if straight people can keep up with our vocabulary, although it may feel that way. No, actually, it's an amazing thing that's happening. For example, people are discovering new words to describe gender identity. They're saying, oh my God, that's me. I didn't even know I could be that. And suddenly the world opens up. That is the power of language. And so, in the same way, having a robust spiritual vocabulary, whatever it may be, is, I believe, essential. Because when we have sacred words, they can help us to be more attuned to the deeper spiritual meaning of things. Help us witness and feel the richness of our present moment. Think about your own life. What words of reverence, of meaning, do you have in your pocket to place on your life? For example, on the precious people in your life. Who are the great teachers of your life, the great healers of your life, the people who make you feel that you belong, that you are not alone? What words of reverence do you place on those relationships? It's like when you're young, like really young, and you discover that there is this special thing, this special title that you can give to someone. Best friend. And you choose who to give it to, and if you're lucky, they give it back to you, and then you're like, whoa, this is special. And then you want to live up to it and live into it. And those words, best friend, actually strengthen your relationship. Nowadays, a lot of people will say, you are part of my tribe. You are part of my village. For others, that special designation is chosen family. Do you have a chosen family? A chosen sibling, perhaps? A fitting title to remind you when you're with them that, whoa, This is special. Don't miss it. Don't take it for granted. How about the precious events in your day, in your week? I know many of those moments have changed over the last few weeks. But both now and back when we used to be able to gather in groups of 10 or more, what are the precious moments of your life? Is music a spiritual practice for you? When you are playing music or dancing or singing, is that precious to you? And if so, what are the words to describe that experience? Is there a sense of interconnection that you feel? Or joy? Do you feel the Spirit move through you? What is it? What is at the heart of it? Some of you may have important daily or weekly routines or rituals. Why are those important to you? Does the solitude of your morning cup of coffee help you reconnect with your spirit? Perhaps you enjoy going for walks in the woods. That's becoming a very popular activity in the most recent weeks. When you are going for a walk in the woods, when you are in nature, how does it nourish you? Do you meet God in the woods? Are you humbled among the trees? What is it? Having sacred language helps us to elevate the spiritual richness of our lives, especially in those moments that are disguised as the mundane. And that is what's going on in the story of the cathedral builder that we heard earlier. That wise third laborer with reverence and pride says, "Can't you see? We're building a cathedral." And the meaning he places on that action fundamentally changes his experience of that work. He's not just busting rocks. With every swing of his hammer, he is doing sacred work. He is attuned to the sacredness, to the greater meaning. If one day God floated down on a cloud, and I know we don't all believe in God, but humor me for a second. If one day some god or goddess or spiritual master appeared to you one day while you were running or gardening or sitting down for a meal with your kids and said, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" What are you really doing right now? What would you say? How would you describe your actions and why they really, really matter? What I love most about Unitarian Universalism is that we each have the authority to answer that question for ourselves. It's captured in our fourth principle, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And of course, we journey together. Of course, we are connected by our shared faith and our covenant with one another. But in another sense, we are also on our own, each traveling our own spiritual paths. And the great privilege, the great responsibility of making ultimate meaning of our lives is ours and ours alone. Only we can do that for ourselves. And that beautiful tool of language can help us along the way. So how might we acquire more spiritual language to help us on our journey? Well, I think it's helpful for us to reflect on our current relationship with sacred words, to do a personal audit of our spiritual vocabulary. I'd like you all to close your eyes for a moment. And we're on video, so nobody will see you do it anyway. And I'm going to offer some religious language. I'm going to read a list of words, and I want you to just pay attention to any mental or physical or emotional reaction that you have. Grace, transcendence, blessing, surrender, reverence, Holy Spirit, Spirit of life, sin, salvation, meditation, prayer, Heavenly Father, Mother Earth. You can open your eyes now. How was that? Which words, if any, felt beautiful and life-giving to you? Words that maybe you regularly use. Were there any words that piqued your curiosity, that you might want to newly claim and use in your life, to help you live into your beliefs, to help you describe what's going on in this world? And did any words evoke negative emotions in you? Feel oppressive even? If these or other religious words don't work for you, then absolutely get rid of them. Feel free, truly. But don't get rid of a word because of someone else's definition of it. Because if we throw away every word that someone somewhere has used for harm, or has defined in a way that just doesn't jive with our beliefs, then it's as if we are conceding that they somehow own that word and its definition. And that is simply not true. These words can be reimagined, redefined by us, for us. These words are ours to claim if we want them. And here's the other thing, and it's a big thing. Understanding our relationship with these words is not just important for our own lives, but also for the life of this community. The same word that irked you, that made you uncomfortable or felt oppressive to you, the thing is, that word might be life-giving to someone else in your community. And more broadly, the theological idea you reject may be fundamental to the faith of another person that you worship with together. And that is the radical project of Unitarian Universalism. That is what makes me proud to be UU. It's our third principle. acceptance and encouragement of each other's spiritual growth in all our theological diversity. That is what we signed up for. To hold close our own sacred words and make sure there is room for everyone else's, so that we are not reduced to the least common denominator, but rather celebrate all that we believe and all that we are. Just in talking to some of you in March, I could hear that there is rich theological diversity in your congregation. And I hope you feel a great sense of pride in that. I hope you continue to strengthen that part of your congregation's identity, because it is what our faith calls us to do. And in 2020, it is what our world needs us to do. May we live into that great paradox of our faith, that I am on my path and you are on yours, and we are journeying together. And may we be attuned to the deeper spiritual dimensions in all that life offers us, especially right now. Naming and experiencing the sacredness in each moment, in this very moment. We are not meant to spend our time on earth busting rocks. We are not meant to look back at our lives and see that the mundane was in fact miraculous. We are meant to build cathedrals. May it be so. Amen.
Let's take a few moments for quiet, for meditation. So letting your body relax by just maybe wiggling a little bit, letting the shoulders drop down away from the ears, letting your hands rest comfortably. And take a breath in and exhale everything. Listening to the sounds of nature. Feeling the earth hold you. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Gurudev, Gurudev Namo. Gurudev, Gurudev Namo. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Namaste. Breathe into the cool, cool river, river of peace. Breathe into the cool, cool river, river of peace. Breathe into the cool, cool river, river of peace. Let it move down, down, down to your soul. Breathe into the cool, cool river, river of joy. Breathe into the cool, cool river, river of joy. Breathe into the cool, cool river of joy. Let it move down, 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 down to your soul.
This morning I want to name something that is obvious, but I think very important to say out loud right now. And it's this. This is a very hard time. This is a very scary time, a very vulnerable time. And though this virus certainly calls us to reckon with the scary parts of our interdependence, though it has literally isolated us physically from one another, it also reminds us of something else, that we are all connected. It also calls us to live fully into that truth that we know deep in our bones, that we are not alone. And while this is always true, while it is always the case that we are fundamentally connected, the experience of not being alone, the experience in this moment of feeling seen and feeling supported, well, that is up to us to do that for one another. That's our job right now. Even though there's so much that we can't control right now, the truth is that we are actually more powerful than we can even imagine. We have the power to spread love in the face of fear. We have the power to create this beloved community outside of the context that we're used to grow and to change, and to reach out in new ways. I hope in the week to come you find ways to lean into this beautiful, beloved community. I hope that you, if you haven't already, pick up the phone or send a text message or an email. And don't overthink it. If you don't know what to say, simply let people know in this congregation that you're here for them, and that you've got their back, and that we're going to get through this together. May it be so.